Chicago was quiet, save for the hum of my laptop. It was late, another typical evening for Mason Elwood, 26, a senior audit associate. My phone buzzed, cutting through the silence like a sharp, unwelcome truth. The screen displayed a message from Gerald, my father, back in Knoxville, Tennessee. It was concise, brutal, and utterly devoid of human warmth. "I disown you. All future communication via my lawyer." I stared at the words, allowing their iciness to settle. There was no shock, no surge of pain, only a profound, chilling recognition. This was not a betrayal. It was merely the final explicit confirmation of a reality I had long understood. For years I had navigated their volatile emotional landscape, my contributions always transactional. This text, however, declared a forced emancipation. My fingers, steady and precise from years of financial documentation, tapped a single cold word in reply. "Okay." I did not initiate a call. I did not attempt to argue. Instead, I opened my banking application. With the unwavering focus of an auditor identifying and isolating a compromised asset, I systematically severed every financial tether. The automatic monthly payment of $2,980 for the mortgage on the Knoxville family home, a sum I had unfailingly transferred for 4 years accumulating to $143,040, was immediately canceled. My self-imposed peace tax, the silent payment for their approval, was officially rescinded. The family cell phone plan terminated. The business credit line I had once co-signed for my father's restaurant supply company, that obligation was decisively withdrawn. I observed the updates on the digital ledger. Each canceled transaction felt not like a loss, but a meticulous reclamation. They demanded a lawyer I would provide them with far more than legal counsel. I would deliver a complete forensic accounting. This was beyond mere anger. This was the pursuit of overdue justice. The $143,040 represented not just money, but the meticulously itemized cost of their disdain. 48 hours before that cutting declaration, I had received my own undeniable audit report on my family's true nature. That revelation marked the precise moment their carefully constructed world began its inevitable controlled demolition. 48 hours before my father's formal disownment, a different kind of message arrived, piercing the calm of my Chicago evening. It was a text from my Uncle Randy Gerald's younger brother. Attached was a video link accompanied by a terse telling note. "You need to see this. Pretty sure Gerald meant to send it elsewhere." I clicked the link. The footage, handheld and slightly unsteady, depicted a lively family dinner. It was a scene from the Elwood family home in Knoxville, Tennessee, gathering to which I conspicuously had not been invited. My father Gerald sat at the head of the table, a beer in his hand. My brother Colton leaned back casually. My Aunt Cheryl's boisterous laughter filled the background. The voices, though sometimes overlapping, were horrifyingly distinct. "Mason is a decent kid helping you out like this," Uncle Randy's voice offered from just off camera. My father snorted, his gaze fixed somewhere beyond the lens. "He is not a kid. He is a walking ATM, the most desperate one I know. He is so starved for approval he would pay for the very air we breathe if I demanded it." Colton, ever the golden child, chimed in with a sneer. "He truly believes wiring dad money makes him important, but he is still just Mason, the family's convenient backup plan." A wave of collective laughter erupted. Gerald raised his glass in a mock salute. "To our personal ATM." The sound of clinking glasses, followed by renewed gleeful chuckles, echoed in my apartment. There were no tears, no immediate fiery outburst. Instead, an almost clinical detachment settled upon me. My profession as an auditor involved meticulously uncovering the rot hidden beneath meticulously kept ledgers. On that night, for the first time, I subjected my own family to such scrutiny. The emotional and financial discrepancies were colossal. The $143,040 I had unfailingly provided was revealed not as a generous contribution, but as a peace tax, the extortionate fee paid to temporarily silence their endless demands and cutting manipulation. They perceived me not as a son, but as a mere utility. And with that clarity, I understood that the time for payment was over. Use arrow up and arrow down to select a turn. Enter to jump to it, and escape to return to the chat. My designated role within the Elwood family was carved out long before I reached adulthood. Colton, my elder brother, basked in the glow of being the golden child. His unremarkable achievements lauded, his frequent failures consistently dismissed as mere bad luck. I conversely was the quiet, reliable one, the responsible son. My upbringing in Knoxville unfolded amidst a constant undercurrent of unspoken expectations, household chores, shifts at the family store after school, and solitary study sessions. My father Gerald reserved his sharpest rebukes and most cutting criticisms for me, trivializing any success I achieved while vigorously defending Colton against every setback. The definitive financial exploitation of my position commenced when I was 22. My father's restaurant supply business, perennially unstable, teetered on the brink of collapse, facing imminent foreclosure on our family home. Gerald and my mother Janet made frantic, tearful calls. "You are the one with integrity, Mason." My father pleaded, his voice thick with a calculated desperation. "You are our only hope. We are counting on you." At that time, I had just secured my first professional role as an audit associate in Chicago, earning a stable, albeit modest, income. Despite the internal alarms blaring, I succumbed, agreeing to cover the $2,980 monthly mortgage payment. This act was not born of generosity. It was the insidious, well-practiced mechanism of the family scapegoat. You swiftly learn that affection is not freely given. It is earned exclusively through your perceived usefulness. Silence in their calculus was interpreted as blatant ingratitude. However, the consistent provision of funds guaranteed a fragile temporary respite from their relentless emotional warfare. My substantial peace tax represented the exact cost I paid to avert their shouting, their sophisticated emotional blackmail, and the crushing, weaponized guilt of neglecting family obligations. And any attempt I made to assert boundaries or decline a request was met with accusations of profound selfishness and dire threats of destroying the family. The video capturing their mocking toast to "our personal ATM" was more than just a display of casual cruelty. It was a stark public reaffirmation of a manipulative system that had served their interests flawlessly for 3 decades. And I was, without any doubt, finished being their financial instrument. After I meticulously severed every financial tie, an eerie quiet descended upon my life. For 48 hours, my phone remained stubbornly silent. It was a strange, unsettling calm, both a relief and a premonition of the storm to come. The customary flurry of demands, the subtle digs, the urgent requests, all ceased. This new silence felt unnervingly vast, a vacuum before the explosion. Then precisely on the 3rd morning, the peace shattered. My phone vibrated insistently. The caller identification displayed Janet Elwood, my mother. I let it ring 3 times, watching her name flash a beacon of impending chaos. Finally, I answered, placing the call on speakerphone. "Mason, what have you done?" Her voice was a high-pitched shriek, thin with disbelief and raw panic. "The bank just called your father. The mortgage payment was rejected. It is due today. Mason, you need to fix this right now. You know, we do not have that kind of money." I waited, my gaze fixed on the gleaming countertop in my Chicago kitchen until her frantic gasps for breath punctuated her tirade. My voice, when it came, was as flat and unyielding as the stone beneath my hands. "Janet," I stated, using her given name, a deliberate choice. "I was disowned. Your husband declared that all communication goes through his lawyer." "What? What lawyer, Mason? Do not you dare talk to me like that." Before she could finish her outburst, I calmly ended the call. Immediately, my phone erupted. It was a digital avalanche of their entitlement. A text from my brother Colton, "You ruined Dad. Fix it now, you pathetic loser." Another from my Aunt Cheryl, "Your mother is hysterical. Whatever childish game you are playing, you need to stop it immediately and apologize. Childish game." Their words echoed the familiar worn script of our family drama. They still perceived me as a petulant child throwing a tantrum for attention. They utterly failed to grasp that I was an auditor calmly and deliberately closing their books. I did not respond to a single text. I did not answer a single call. Instead, I opened my laptop. It was time to draft the most significant email of my life. My fingers, steady and precise, typed out the email. Its tone was clinical, factual, a perfect reflection of an audit report. The recipient list was extensive and deliberately chosen my entire extended family, including Uncle Randy, who sent the video, and Aunt Cheryl, who laughed in it. Crucially, I also added several prominent members of their Knoxville community individuals who served on the board of the local medical fund my father managed and longtime acquaintances who valued Gerald's public image. The subject line was deceptively simple: "Financial support for Gerald Elwood." The body of the email was concise and to the point. "To all," I began, "as I have been formally disowned by Gerald as of Sunday night, this email is to notify you that my ongoing financial support has concluded. For the sake of full transparency, I have attached a ledger of the support I have provided over the last 48 months, which totals $143.40. Then came the crucial contextual element. I have also attached a short video from a recent family gathering which I feel provides the necessary context for my decision. Sincerely, Mason Elwood. Attached were 2 files, Mortgage Payments Ledger 143K PDF and Family Dinner ATM.mp4. Facts and feelings meticulously presented. My finger hovered over the send button. This was more than ending an argument. This was detonating a carefully constructed reputation. I recalled their laughter, their words, personal ATM. I clicked. Within hours, the predictable backlash began. But it was not an apology. Instead, I received a formal-looking email from a law firm I did not recognize. It was a cease and desist letter accusing me of defamation, harassment, and tortious interference with my father's business. It demanded a public retraction and a formal apology, threatening a $95,000 lawsuit if I failed to comply immediately. They genuinely believed a stern letterhead would make me crawl back. I read the letter once, then laughed softly. They picked the wrong auditor to threaten. I forwarded the email to Avery Lockhart, a family law attorney in Chicago, known for her aggressive no-nonsense approach. My battle was no longer just personal. It was officially legal. After forwarding the aggressive cease and desist letter to Avery Lockhart, my new attorney, I detailed the full scope of my family's financial manipulations. Then I ventured into a deeper, more unsettling suspicion that had long troubled me. As an auditor, I have always harbored misgivings about my father's handling of money even outside the family business. I explained to Avery. He managed a small community medical fund in Knoxville for an elderly neighbor, Mrs. Ruth Whitford, who is battling cancer. The Whitford family established it, and Gerald volunteered to oversee the accounts. I recounted seeing some of the financial paperwork Gerald had filed for the fund. The records were unusually creative, I stated, choosing my words carefully. There were vague categories for expenses, a distinct lack of proper oversight, and disbursements that lacked clear justification. At the time, I attributed it to my father's habitual sloppiness. However, with everything else coming to light, I suspect sloppy was a deliberate camouflage for something far more illicit. I believed he was not merely mismanaging funds. I suspected outright diversion. Avarice interest immediately sharpened. "Provide me with everything you remember, every document you ever glimpsed," she instructed, her voice conveying a steely resolve. She initiated a meticulous parallel investigation into the medical fund, leveraging her legal access to request comprehensive financial statements, deposit logs, and withdrawal records. I supplied her with every minute detail, every lingering doubt from my past observations. 2 days later, Avery's return call shattered any lingering hope I had for a simpler explanation. Her voice was grim, stripped of its usual professional detachment. "Mason, it is exactly as you suspected," she confirmed. "But the reality is far more egregious." "How much worse?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, a cold dread coiling in my stomach. "He did not simply borrow from the fund," she revealed. "Gerald systematically embezzled from it. Over the past 3 years, he has siphoned $74,500 from that woman's vital medical fund. He was stealing from a cancer patient, all while actively demanding and accepting $2,980 every single month from his own son." My entire body seized with a profound revulsion. This transgression transcended mere family drama. It was a heinous criminal act. My mass email, combined with the rapidly circulating news of Gerald's embezzlement from the medical fund, had unleashed a torrent of long-buried secrets. The enforced silence that had governed my family for decades was now brutally shattered, replaced by a cascade of revelations, each more damning than the last. That evening, my phone rang again. It was Natalie, my cousin Aunt Cheryl's daughter. Her voice, when she spoke, was thin and constricted with barely contained sobs. "Mason," she whispered, her words trembling. "I saw your email. I saw the video. I simply have to tell you something. I am so sorry." "Natalie, what is truly wrong?" I asked, a growing sense of dread tightening in my chest. "It is about your father," she began, her voice nearly inaudible. "When I was 17, I stayed at your house. You were already away at college. He came into my room. He was predatory Mason. He tried—" Her confession dissolved into a raw, shuddering gasp. A profound nausea washed over me. "What exactly did you do?" I managed to ask. "I screamed," she replied, her voice regaining a fragile strength. "I told my mother, your Aunt Cheryl, the very next day. She immediately told me I had to remain quiet, that I must have misunderstood what happened, that I would utterly ruin the family if I ever spoke of it again. She has been protecting him. They all have been protecting him. That is why she laughed so forcefully in that video. She is absolutely terrified of him." It was a chilling revelation of a carefully constructed conspiracy of silence, meticulously built to shield Gerald Elwood, the patriarch, from the severe consequences of his monstrous actions. The final devastating call came an hour later. It was from Eleanor Price, my late mother's closest friend, a woman I had not spoken to in years. "Mason, dear," she began, her voice heavy with a deep, sorrowful resonance. "I did not fully comprehend until I saw that email chain. Your cousin forwarded it to me." She paused, then continued, her voice gaining a quiet, firm power. "Your mother, she would be so incredibly proud of you right now. You finally achieved what she never could. Gerald was not merely a poor father. He was an emotionally and financially abusive husband. He bled her dry, controlling every penny, belittling every single decision. You are not the scapegoat, Mason. You were simply the next victim in his lifelong pattern of exploitation." I gently hung up the phone. All the disparate pieces of my life finally interlocked, forming a horrifying, undeniable mosaic. This was not merely a dysfunctional family unit. This was a crime scene meticulously hidden behind a veneer of normalcy, and Gerald Elwood was the unrepentant perpetrator. News of the $74,500 embezzlement from Mrs. Ruth Whitford's medical fund did not remain a secret for long in Knoxville. It festered, then erupted. Within a week, the story began to ripple through the close-knit community, whispers in church-hushed conversations at the local charity events, worried murmurs among the retirees. Gerald Elwood's name, once synonymous with respectability in his small business circles, was suddenly tainted, whispered in tones of shock and disbelief. My brother Colton, the perennial golden child, reacted with a spectacular display of panicked ineptitude. Convinced that he needed to control the narrative, he made the single most self-destructive move possible. He went to Facebook. Colton posted a long, rambling public status update, a desperate attempt to frame the story in his favor. "I simply cannot believe what my brother is doing to our family." He wrote his words a clumsy dance between outrage and thinly veiled fear. "He has always been jealous, but this is a new low. My father is a good man. He was the auditor. He had access to all the books for that fund. Now $74,500 is missing, and he is framing our father to steal his house. He is the one who stole the money." He genuinely believed he was steering public opinion, painting me as the villain. I received screenshots of the post within minutes. I forwarded them to Avery. We both read it almost in disbelief at Colton's sheer stupidity. Instead of deflecting blame, he had publicly confirmed the exact amount missing, $74. $500, admitted that I, the auditor, had indeed seen the books, and most critically given the victim's family a fresh, unambiguous target. The Whitford family. Mrs. Ruth Whitford's relatives had been heartbroken and hesitant to pursue criminal charges against a respected community member. Colton's inflammatory Facebook post, however, ignited their fury. My lawyer, Avery, called me that afternoon. Her voice, usually so composed, held a distinct note of satisfaction. "You are not going to believe this, Mason," she said, and I could almost hear her smiling. "The Whitford family is now filing a criminal complaint for embezzlement and conspiracy to defraud. They did not just name Gerald. They named Colton, too. His Facebook post, and I quote their lawyer, was a public confession of his involvement in a criminal cover-up." The direct confrontation I had unknowingly been preparing for my entire life was no longer a distant threat. It was rapidly approaching, fueled by their own catastrophic blunders. The full force of the criminal complaint naming both Gerald and Colton hit the Elwood family like a tsunami. Legal maneuvering began in Knoxville, but in Chicago my life felt oddly detached from the unfolding chaos. I was simply following Avery's directives, providing information, and waiting. The direct confrontation I had implicitly braced for my entire life, however, did not arrive as a formal summons or an angry phone call. It arrived with a desperate, tentative knock on my apartment door. It was a quiet Saturday evening. I was doing dishes, lost in the mundane rhythm, when I heard it. A soft, hesitant rap. I opened the door, and there he stood, Gerald Elwood. He looked utterly diminished. This was not the arrogant tyrant from the video, nor the demanding patriarch of my childhood. This was just a terrified old man. His face was unshaven, his eyes bloodshot and hollow, hinting at days, perhaps weeks, of sleepless anxiety. His usual commanding presence had entirely evaporated, replaced by a defeated slump. "Mason," he said, his voice cracking barely above a whisper. "Please. They are going to arrest me. The police, they are talking about fraud. You have to help me. You are my son." He was actually wringing his hands, a pathetic gesture I had never witnessed from him before. "You are the auditor. You can fix this. You can tell them it was all a mistake. Just give me money for a better lawyer. Please." He stood on my doorstep, begging me to be his ATM one last time. The man who had disowned me, who had called me a lonely, desperate ATM, was now desperate himself. I looked at him, and in that moment, all the years of manipulation, the contempt, the abuse, the hidden secrets flashed through my mind. The video. The $143,040. Natalie's whispered confession. Eleanor's sorrowful truths. Mrs. Ruth Whitford's stolen $74,500. I did not speak. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I handed it to him. What is this?" he stammered, his hands trembling as he unfolded it. It was a copy of the criminal complaint. I watched his eyes scan the page, growing wider and wider until they landed on the second name listed as a co-conspirator, Colton. "You should probably give this to his lawyer, too," I said, my voice as calm and flat as the surface of the paper. His head snapped up his face, a mask of confusion and horror. "Mason, I am your father. You disowned me, remember?" I replied, my voice unwavering. "Talk to my lawyer." I closed the door. The quiet click of the lock was the loudest sound of my life sealing shut the chapter of their control. My single word, "okay," sent to my father was the quiet detonator for their fraudulent lives. The collapse of the Elwood family was not a single explosion, but a series of controlled demolitions. First, the legal threat against me vanished once Avery presented proof of Gerald's $74,500 embezzlement. The criminal case, however, moved with brutal speed. Colton, my golden child brother, crumbled first. Faced with conspiracy charges, his entitlement shattered. He took a plea deal testifying against his own father to avoid jail. He painted himself as a victim, but the community saw a coward. He was left with a ruined reputation and crippling legal debts. Then came Gerald. Without Colton's defense and armed with my detailed audit notes, his trial was a formality. He was convicted of felony fraud, receiving 3 years in state prison. I did not attend. With Gerald jailed and Colton bankrupt, the house was next. The bank quickly foreclosed on the home I had saved for 4 years, selling it at auction for a pittance. The Elwood name, once esteemed, became synonymous with betrayal. While their world imploded, mine paradoxically began to flourish. A week after Gerald's sentencing, my boss offered me a promotion, senior audit director. "Mason," she said, "you handled unimaginable pressure with absolute integrity. That is the leadership we need." I left her office, promotion in hand, looking out at the Chicago skyline. No tears, no grand celebration, just a profound sense of solidity. My worth was no longer debated. It was a fact on a new contract. The ledgers were finally balanced. I never contacted them again. I heard the house sold. I heard Gerald was released. I heard Colton works in a warehouse burdened by debt. That $2,980 monthly peace tax I used to pay, I now invested in myself. The silence here is different. Their silence was a weapon. This silence is peace. I started a blog, The Black Sheep's Ledger, writing about financial abuse and setting boundaries. The response was immense. I realized I was not alone. To all who relate, you are the fixer, the peacemaker. They treated your kindness as an obligation. Sometimes the most powerful act of kindness is to finally close the ledger on them.